Welcome. I'd really appreciate if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and reactions as you listen. Your feedback helps me craft better stories for you. The humid night air was heavy on my skin as I walked home alone down the deserted dirt road. It was well past midnight, and the remote village had long gone to sleep. My family's small hut was only a mile further, but every step seemed to drag on forever, in thinky darkness. A rustling in the dense foliage lining the road made me jump. I quickened my pace, clutching my worn shawl tighter around my shoulders. The jungle pressed in on all sides, its shadows concealing any number of unseen threats. A sliver of moon provided the barest illumination, yet the dense canopy above blocked out even its pale glow. A snapping twig caused me to whirl around, heart pounding, but nothing was there. I chided myself for being so jumpy, yet an instinctive sense of unease had taken hold. Continuing onward at a near run, I strained my ears for any abnormal sounds over my own ragged breathing. Then, without warning, a thick arm wrapped around my torso from behind. A calloused hand clamped over my mouth to stifle my scream. I thrashed in a panic, kicking and clawing at my assailant to no avail. His overpowering musk of sweat and cigarettes invaded my nostrils as he dragged me off the road into the dense undergrowth. My muffled cries were lost to the night as he hauled me deeper into the jungle's clutches. Thorns and branches tore at my skin and clothes, but I refused to stop struggling, biting down hard on the hand gagging me. With a grunt of pain, my captor released his grip just enough for me to shriek at the top of my lungs. "Shut up," he growled in heavily accented Tagalog, cuffing me across the face. Stars exploded behind my eyes, and my vision swam. Before I could recover, a sickly sweet chemical scent overwhelmed my senses. A rag was pressed firmly to my nose and mouth, forcing me to inhale the noxious fumes. Within moments, my struggles grew feeble as consciousness rapidly slipped away. Through blurring vision, I glimpsed a nondescript white van idling on the road up ahead before everything went black. The last thought that flitted through my fading mind was that I may never see my family again. I awoke to darkness and the acrid stench of mildew. Disoriented, I tried to sit up, but my wrists were bound behind my back, the rough rope cutting into my skin. My ankles were also tied, keeping me immobilized on the cold, damp concrete floor. Panic seized me as I thrashed about uselessly, taking in my grim surroundings. The tiny cell was barely larger than a closet, with crumbling brick walls and a single barred window high above, letting in only a sliver of moonlight. A rusted metal bucket in the corner served as a toilet. My heart sank as I realized with chilling certainty that I'd been taken to some kind of torture chamber deep in the jungle. A creak of hinges made me freeze in terror. A sliver of light spilled into the cell as the heavy steel door swung open with a rusty groan. A hulking silhouette filled the entrance, regarding me with cold, predatory eyes that glinted in the darkness. My blood turned to ice in my veins. "So you're finally awake," a gravelly voice said in accented but fluent Tagalog. Footsteps approached as the man loomed over me, blocking what little light seeped in. "I'm Peter, and from now on, you will do everything I say without question. Understand?" I could only whimper and nod frantically, paralyzed by fear. A meaty hand grasped my chin in an iron grip, forcing me to meet that soulless gaze. "You belong to me now, little pet," Peter growled, a cruel smile twisting his features. "And you will please me however I desire, or suffer the consequences." Do I make myself clear? Tears streamed down my cheeks as I nodded again, my entire body trembling uncontrollably. A mirthless chuckle rumbled from deep in Peter's chest. "Good girl. You may call me Master from now on." He released my face just to backhand me, hard across the temple. "Now let's begin your training, shall we?" My screams echoed off the damp walls as unspeakable agony began in that wretched cell, far from any hope of rescue or escape. I had become Peter's plaything, and this nightmare was only just starting. Peter's heavy boots echoed down the narrow hallway as he left me sobbing in a crumpled heap. My whole body throbbed with a pain beyond anything I had ever known, both inside and out. Crimson stains soaked through my tattered clothes where his belt had torn my flesh. Somehow, I found the strength to roll onto my side, curling into a protective ball. Every movement sent fresh waves of agony coursing through my battered form. My mind reeled, trying desperately to block out the memories of what had just been done, but they replayed on an endless loop, searing themselves into my psyche. Time lost all meaning as I lay shivering in the darkness, drifting in and out of an uneasy delirium. At some point, hunger pangs cut through the haze, a reminder that another night had passed. But I dreaded what would come with the dawn. Sure enough, heavy footsteps soon approached, dragging me back to cruel reality. I cringed against the wall, bracing for another onslaught, but the cell door did not open. Instead, muffled screams and cries began to filter down the hall, growing more panicked by the moment. A girl's voice pleaded and begged, her words dissolving into guttural wails of agony. I clapped my hands over my ears but could not block out the sounds of her torture. Her shrieks went on until abruptly cutting off with a sickening wet crunch. Silence fell once more. My stomach roiled at the implications. I had not been the only one trapped in this hellish place, but the others had not survived Peter's depraved games. A cold certainty settled over me. Obey or die. There would be no mercy or escape from this monster's clutches. When Peter returned hours later, I scrambled into a kneeling position, bowing my head submissively. Anything to avoid provoking that savage wrath again. But compliance would not spare me further degradation. He yanked me to my feet by a fistful of hair, dragging me down the hall. My cell door stood open, revealing a cramped concrete room lit by a single naked bulb. A tripod mounted with a video camera faced a stained mattress on the floor, its red light blinking ominously. My heart sank as I realized with dawning horror what was about to happen. "Get on the bed, Pete," Peter growled in my ear, shoving me roughly forward. I stumbled and fell to my knees, too weak and terrified to stand. A vicious kick to my ribs rolled me onto my back, eliciting a cry of pain. "Now, be a good girl and smile for the camera." Sobbing, I turned my head away, unable to meet that unblinking electronic eye. A brutal backhand snapped my gaze back to its unforgiving lens. I lay trembling as Peter loomed over me. His predatory leer sending fresh waves of revulsion through my core. "This one has spirit. I think the viewers will enjoy breaking her," he said to someone off camera in accented English. A muffled reply came from the darkness, followed by the click and whir of equipment powering on. My blood ran cold at the implications. There were others watching, taking sick pleasure in my degradation. "No, please," I whimpered, fresh tears streaming down my cheeks. "Mercy?" Peter chuckled, a sound like gravel in a blender. "There is no mercy for worthless whores. Now, be a good little slut and entertain us." He tore open my tattered clothes, baring my bruised and battered flesh. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would all be over quickly. But the ordeal had only just begun. For what seemed like hours, Peter violated and defiled me in every imaginable way, while the camera rolled, capturing it all. My screams echoed off the damp walls to no avail. No one would come to my rescue in this isolated hell. I was trapped in a nightmare with no end, a plaything for Peter and his depraved audience. By the time he finally grew bored, I lay in a broken, bleeding heap, wishing for death's release from this agony. But there would be no escape that easy. Peter hauled me back to the cell and tossed me inside like so much garbage. My shattered mind retreated deep within as unconsciousness mercifully pulled me under once more. When I awoke, raw pain still gripped my ravaged body like a vice. But a spark of clarity had returned. I must find a way to survive this ordeal. Gingerly sitting up, I took stock of my surroundings for any means of resistance or escape, but there was nothing, only cold stone walls, and that tiny barred window far out of reach. Despair threatened to overwhelm me again, until a noise outside caught my attention. Muffled sobs and pleas drifted down the hall from another cell. Peter had found new prey for his depraved games. Renewed determination filled me. I had to get help before he broke another innocent soul. But for now, all I could do was pray and wait for any opportunity, no matter how small. My will to live was all I had left. Time ceased to have meaning as the endless cycle of torture and degradation continued without reprieve. I lost count of the nights spent curled in a fetal ball, drifting in and out of fitful sleep, haunted by nightmares. My body was a canvas of scars and bruises in various stages of healing. Peter's depraved games grew ever more violent and depraved, as if seeking to push the boundaries of human suffering. The girls in the other cells did not last long before meeting grisly ends, their screams fading one by one. Despair threatened to overwhelm me, yet my will to survive refused to die. One night, I awoke to the sound of raised voices echoing down the hall. Peter was angry about something. Heavy footfalls stormed past my cell, followed by a door slamming in the distance. Silence fell once more, but for the first time, I was alone. My heart leapt at the realization. Peter had left the compound, perhaps for the first time since bringing me here. It was now or never, summoning what little strength remained. I struggled to my feet, using the wall for support. Pain lanced through my battered form, but I grit my teeth and ignored it. Staggering over to the tiny barred window, I stood on shaking legs and peered out into inky blackness. Nothing but dense jungle as far as the eye could see. But somewhere out there lay freedom, if only I could find a way past these walls. My fingers curled around the rusty bars, testing their stability. With a grunt of effort, I threw my meager weight against them. Dust and flakes of rust rained down, but the bars held firm. I tried again and again to no avail, growing more desperate and frantic by the moment. What if Peter returned before I could escape? I'd be dead for sure. Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, a creak of protest sounded from high above. Hope surged through my veins with renewed strength. Bracing my feet against the wall, I heaved with everything I had left. With an agonizing screech, bars suddenly gave way outward. Wasting no time, I scrambled through the narrow opening, scraping my body on the jagged edges. Pain lanced through me, but I bit back a cry, focused only on freedom. Hauling myself out onto the damp earth, I collapsed in a panting heap, elation and relief flooding through my veins. But I was not safe yet. Somewhere in the dense jungle, Peter was lurking with who knows what unspeakable intentions. Summoning my last reserves of willpower, I pushed myself to unsteady feet and staggered into the dense undergrowth. Thorns and branches tore at my threadbare clothes and lacerated my skin, but I refused to stop. Stumbling blindly through the pitch-black jungle, I followed whatever faint animal tracks or broken foliage I could discern by moonlight. My body was racked with pain and exhaustion, on the verge of collapse, but I dared not stop. Each step had to be toward escape or death. The dense canopy blocked out even the stars to guide my way. Just as I was about to surrender to darkness, a faint glow appeared in the distance between the trees. Hope surged through my veins, giving me renewed strength. I stumbled toward the light with desperation, crashing through the undergrowth. Breaking into a small clearing, I beheld a tiny thatch, roofed village in a hollow ahead. People, I thought deliriously. Help. My legs finally gave out and I tumbled face first into the dirt. Darkness closed in as distant shouts rose up, accompanied by pounding footsteps. Strong arms lifted me, but I was too far gone to make out faces or words. For the first time in months, I allowed oblivion to take me. I was safe. Consciousness returned slowly, dragging me from the blissful void. Warmth enveloped my aching body along with the herbal scent of medicinal balms. Blinking open heavy lids, I beheld a thatched ceiling lit by flickering lamplight. Soft voices conversed nearby in a local dialect. Turning my head sent lances of pain through my neck, but I had to know where I was. Two elderly women sat by a fire, stirring a bubbling pot. At my movement, they turned with kindly smiles, speaking soothing words in a language I barely understood. But the meaning was clear. I was safe among friends. Tears of relief spilled down my gaunt cheeks as a flood of emotions overwhelmed me. For the first time in what seemed like forever, hope blossomed in my heart that I might someday leave this nightmare behind. But first, I had to regain my strength and plan my next move. Weeks passed as I slowly recovered under the villagers' care, regaining a semblance of strength both physical and mental. The kindly elders, Mila and Lola, tended to my every need with motherly compassion. Their remote hamlet was so isolated that news of the outside world rarely reached even these shores. Each day, fragmented memories resurfaced of my ordeal, tormenting me with their vivid clarity. I took to wandering the dense jungle trails to escape the horrors replaying in my mind. But there was no outrunning the past or the monster who inflicted it. Peter still lurked out there, free to prey on others as he had me. The thought fueled a burning need for vengeance within. I had to ensure no one else suffered as I had. But how could a broken girl from a nameless village stand against such evil? Despair threatened to overwhelm me until a spark of determination took hold. I had to go to the authorities. Breaking the news to Mila and Lola was not easy. They begged me to stay where I'd be safe. But I was resolute. After many tears, they reluctantly agreed to accompany me partway by boat to the nearest port town. There, I said, my farewells with a heavy heart, embracing them like the mothers I'd never see again. The long journey was arduous, yet I refused all offers of help, determined to face this trial on my own terms. Finally reaching the outskirts of the bustling town, I gathered my courage and approached the rundown police station. But upon seeing my haggard state, the officers were skeptical of my tale. It wasn't until I described Peter's remote jungle compound in exacting detail that their dismissive attitudes shifted to intrigue. I recounted every horrific moment endured, holding nothing back, no matter the personal cost. By the time I finished, tears streamed unheeded down my gaunt cheeks. The senior detective, Miguel, regarded me with empathy beneath his gruff exterior. He believed my story, to my immense relief. Sending his men to investigate, he sat with me for hours, coaxing out every minute memory or clue that could aid their case. I clung to his steady reassurance that justice would be done. Days passed as we awaited word. Miguel became my rock, keeping me fed and sheltered at the station. A bond of trust grew between detective and witness against all odds. Finally, a radio call came. The compound had been located deep in the jungle, as I described, but it lay abandoned, thoroughly cleaned out. Peter was gone, having deleted all digital evidence before fleeing without a trace. Despair threatened to overwhelm me once more. Had it all been for nothing? But Miguel refused to give up, vowing to bring the monster to justice no matter how long it took. His determination rekindled my fading hope. Together, we pored over the scant evidence recovered, searching for any clue to Peter's whereabouts or accomplices. Weeks of dead ends passed until by chance, I spotted a grainy photograph, a face I'd seen before lurking in the shadows of that hellish chamber. Miguel ran the man through databases until we uncovered his identity. A known human trafficker and associate of Peter's, he'd been tracked to a remote island village. Our first real lead. Without hesitation, Miguel and I boarded a boat to investigate, refusing to be deterred even as night fell. breaking into the man's secluded compound under cover of darkness, we found. Another dead end or clever ruse, Miguel pondered aloud as we retreated into the jungle gloom. But I refused to lose hope, certain this lead held meaning if we could but decipher it. Gazing up at the stars beginning to peek through the canopy, a realization struck me. "Miguel," I said, pointing to a particular constellation. "What if it's not an island, but those stars?" He followed my outstretched finger, a look of dawning comprehension spreading across his weathered features. "I believe we've found our monster's new hiding place. It's time to end this once and for all." A determined glint entered Miguel's eyes, mirroring my own resolve. Come dawn, we would set course for the place I knew in my heart. Peter now lurked. This nightmare was nearing its climax. One way or another, I had survived too much to let the monster slip away into the night. This time, there would be no escape. The long boat ride was filled with a tense anticipation that mounted with each passing mile. Miguel and his men checked and rechecked weapons and equipment under the sweltering sun. I sat apart, lost in memories of the hell I'd endured, and prayers for the strength to face Peter one last time. As dusk fell, we cut engines and drifted the final distance under cover of darkness. Breaking through the tree line, I glimpsed the compound ahead just as I remembered, a nightmarish vision from the past come to life. Miguel laid a steadying hand on my shoulder, silently offering reassurance. Under his command, the team stealthily took up positions around the perimeter. I hung back with a radio, too personally invested to participate in the raid yet unable to stay away. Static crackled as Miguel's gruff whisper came over the line. All was clear to breach. My heart pounded as shouts rang out. Flashbang grenades exploded with blinding light, followed by crashing sounds of doors being breached within. Gunfire erupted briefly, then fell silent once more. An agonizing wait dragged on until Miguel's voice crackled through at last. "We've secured the compound. No casualties reported." Wasting no time, I raced through the jungle toward that place of nightmares, dreading yet needing to face the monster one final time. Breaking into the clearing, I beheld a scene that still haunts me. Peter kneeling in the dirt, cuffed in glaring hatred from beneath a mop of greasy hair. Our eyes met and recognition flashed across his hateful features, twisting them into a sneer. "Well, if it isn't my little pet, all grown up. I see you've come crawling back for more. A game, perhaps." His lewd chuckle sent shivers down my spine, but I refused to back down any longer. "You will never harm another soul," I said, my voice steady despite raging emotions. "It's over, Peter. You've lost." A look of pure malice contorted his face, promising retribution if he ever got the chance. But Miguel stepped between us, blocking the monster from view. "It's time to go," he said gruffly. "Justice will be served." In the aftermath, I gave a full statement recounting every depraved detail, while doctors examined my scars, both visible and not. The physical wounds would heal in time, but memories of that place still haunt my nightmares. Weeks dragged on as the case built toward trial. I stayed close to Miguel, drawing strength from our bond. Finally, the day of reckoning arrived. Sitting in that crowded courtroom, I faced Peter one last time across the aisle, meeting his hateful glare without flinching. As the litany of unspeakable crimes was read aloud, revulsion swept the gallery. But I felt only numb resignation. This evil existed, and I had endured it. When the guilty verdict was declared to thunderous applause, I allowed myself to feel a glimmer of peace. Peter would rot behind bars for the rest of his miserable life, far from any soul to torment. Justice was served in no small part thanks to my courage and Miguel's dedication. As I left the courthouse into the sunlight, I felt free. The scars of the past can never fully fade, but in time, even nightmares lose their power to haunt. I have found purpose helping other survivors and working to end human trafficking. Miguel remains a dear friend. Our bond forged in the fires of that dark place we conquered together. Most of all, I live each day to its fullest, in defiance of all Peter tried to destroy. His name is forgotten, but mine will not be. I am Anna. I survived. The grains of sand fell rapidly now, each one representing another intrusion into my mind. I watched helplessly as the hourglass on my screen emptied, the last remnants slipping through the narrow passage between the bulbs of glass. How long had it been since I downloaded that app? Time had lost all meaning as the visions took hold. It started innocently enough. I was browsing the dark web forums as usual, searching for new frontier to explore in the digital underground. That's when I came across the cryptic post, an encrypted string of code with no other information provided. My curiosity was piqued. I spent hours that night analyzing the code for any clues as to its function. Fragmented messages emerged that seemed almost nonsensical. You shouldn't have opened this. What does that mean? An error finally popped up, instructing me to download the accompanying app if I wanted to see more. Foolishly, recklessly, I complied. The app opened to a blank black screen with a loading bar that stretched on endlessly. A sinking feeling took hold in my gut, but I was in too deep now to back out. When the program finally launched, I saw only a haunting hourglass symbol slowly draining away. That's when the hallucinations began. At first, it was subtle, almost imperceptible movements at the edge of my vision. But when I turned to look directly, nothing was there. I chalked it up to exhaustion from too many late nights online. That's when I noticed the spider crawling across my keyboard. My heart leapt into my throat as I swatted it away in panic. But when I checked my hands, there was nothing. More spiders began appearing then, scurrying in my peripheral vision with unnatural, jerky motions. I knew this wasn't real, yet I couldn't make them stop, no matter how much I flailed around my tiny apartment, trying to hit what wasn't there. The visions only grew stronger as the hourglass emptied. Now whole swarms of spiders crawled over my skin and clothes, their prickling legs sending waves of revulsion through me. I tore at my body trying to remove them, yet found only smooth, untouched flesh. My screams echoed off the bare walls, unheard by any but myself. Exhausted and unhinged, I turned back to my computer in desperation. Frantic searches through dark web forums and hacking databases yielded nothing to explain these waking nightmares. Any information about the mysterious app and its creator had been thoroughly purged. I was trapped in a hallucinatory loop with no way out and no one to help me. As the final grains of sand fell through the narrowing passage, a new terror gripped me. The spiders were no longer content to crawl my skin. I could see them pouring into my eyes and ears, feel their tiny legs wriggling inside my brain. Madness clawed at the edges of my mind, threatening to consume me in its depths. With a final grain, the hourglass emptied and went dark. I sat frozen, too terrified to move as phantom spiders swarmed my immobilized body. Had the vision stopped, or had I simply lost the ability to distinguish reality? I didn't know, and in that moment of utter helplessness, that is what truly broke me. The darkness was all-consuming. How long had I been trapped here with the spiders? Minutes, hours, days. Time had ceased to have meaning in this waking nightmare. My throat was raw from screaming, yet no sound emerged anymore. As I lay curled in a fetal position, unseeing eyes staring blankly ahead, a fragment of rational thought pierced the fog of madness. I had to keep searching. There had to be answers out there if only I dug deep enough. With trembling hands, I booted up my computer once more, bracing for another onslaught of visions. But the screen remained mercifully blank. The Hourglass app nowhere to be found. Had I imagined the whole ordeal in a state of delirium? No. The evidence of shredded clothes and deep scratches covering my body told a different story. My hands flew across the keyboard as I delved back into the uncharted regions of the dark web. Strange forums and hidden sites opened before me, their encrypted pages holding fragmented insights into the digital underworld. A post in an obscure hacking board caught my attention. Someone claiming to have reverse-engineered part of the mysterious app's code. Strings of indecipherable code and programming language met my eyes. I furiously copied it all, hoping an expert could make sense of the gibberish. A private message soon appeared, the anonymous user warning me the app's purpose was unknown even to its creator. They had stumbled upon it by accident and felt compelled to share its inner workings before vanishing without a trace. Another clue emerged. The deeper you go, the more you see. What did that mean? I was grasping at straws, but had no other leads to follow. My descent began in earnest then as I pried open long, sealed doors into regions so dark, even seasoned hackers dared not tread. Disturbing images and corrupted files assaulted my mind the further in I went, integrating seamlessly into the lingering remnants of hallucinations. Was I any closer to answers or merely sinking deeper into whatever twisted game this was? I couldn't be sure anymore. My grip on reality felt tenuous at best after the trauma of those spiders. Maybe this was all an elaborate hallucination, and I remained curled in the corner of my apartment, lost to madness. No, I had to keep going. I owed it to the old version of myself to find the truth, no matter how unsettling. A private forum appeared, locked behind impenetrable firewalls and requiring special invitation to access. This had to be where the real secrets lay buried. For hours, I worked relentlessly, bypassing security protocols and encryptions through whatever means necessary. Just as the final barrier was about to fall, a message flashed across my screen. You should not have seen this. The room spun violently as phantom spiders swarmed my vision once more. I was back in that hellish loop, powerless to stop the descent into madness, dragging me under. Fragmented code and disturbing images blended together in a kaleidoscope of nightmare fuel. My screams were silent now, lost in the void between reality and whatever dark forces had ensnared me through that damnable app. As consciousness slipped away, one last thought echoed in the darkness. I will never be free. The strange symbol first caught Mike's eye while debugging a new app, Latte, one night. A delicate pattern of intertwining lines that resembled wings, like a dragonfly in mid-flight. He peered closer at the code, searching for its meaning or origin, but it was nowhere to be found in the project files. As if inserted by some other hand, its purpose unknown. Intrigued, Mike began searching online for similar symbols. Hours passed as he delved deeper into obscure corners of the dark web. Threads on anonymous forums referenced esoteric groups claiming to commune with nature spirits. One site in particular stood out, a Spartan page titled Insectum Veneficus. Scant details described rituals to harness the power of insects. Comments praised the leader for revealing hidden truths. Against his better judgment, Mike posted asking about the dragonfly symbol. To his surprise, a reply came within minutes from an anonymous user. They directed him to a private forum for those who've seen the light. The days that followed brought cryptic yet beckoning messages on the hidden board. Phrases seemed tailored just for Mike, praising his curiosity and urging him to keep digging. Despite his initial skepticism, the allure of uncovering secrets drew him in. He watched remote ritual viewings on the site, unsettled by the unnatural acts performed to bend nature to the group's will. A surge of dragonfly sightings near Mike's home left him further unsettled yet compelled. Their delicate wings appeared everywhere he went, as if guiding him toward some unseen truth. Late one night, a direct message arrived from the leader himself on the private forum. In flowing prose, he offered to reveal the symbol's meaning if Mike participated in a ritual the following evening. Caution warred with curiosity in Mike's mind. Still, as the hours passed, intrigue got the better of him. At sunset the next day, he arrived at the specified outdoor location, a secluded grove near the city limits. Only a handful of others had gathered so far for the socially distanced rite. They stood apart, faces obscured, as the leader began his invocation to the gathered insects. His rich yet ominous words painted vivid pictures that intensified Mike's unease. Through it all, dragonflies swarmed the grove in greater numbers than he'd ever seen. Their mesmerizing dance seemed to bend the very air, carrying the leader's chants on invisible currents. Mike found himself transfixed, yet longing to flee this unnatural communion with nature's smallest spirits. When the ritual ended, Mike demanded the promised answers from the leader, but the enigmatic figure only smiled and told him it was too late. He was now implicated in their sacred work and could not simply walk away. In that moment, a chill crept through Mike, unlike any he had known. For the dragonflies had marked him as surely as their symbol now marked his soul, and their watchful eyes would follow wherever he went, holding the inescapable grip of the cult whose secrets were not so easily relinquished. The following morning, Mike awoke with a lingering sense of unease. His dreams had been plagued by swirling dragonflies and the leader's ominous words. Checking his phone, a new message awaited from the private forum. It praised his participation and promised further insights if he proved worthy. Mike deleted it with a shudder, wanting to put the strange ritual behind him. In the days that followed, strange events seemed to affirm the cult's watchful gaze. Dragonflies appeared wherever he went, as if heralding some impending sign. At work, a software bug took the shape of their intertwining symbol. Code he had written himself now contained the mark, as if altered by an outside hand. That evening, Mike noticed dragonflies swarming en masse outside his home. Peering through the window, their numbers seemed impossible, a writhing carpet of delicate wings blanketing the yard. He rushed outside to investigate, only to find the insects dispersing at his approach. Their purpose remained obscure yet ominous. A not so subtle message that he was still being monitored. The following night, Mike's sister Jessica called in a panic. She claimed to have seen shadowy figures lurking near her home, vanishing whenever lights were flipped on. Though she was unharmed, the incident shook Mike to his core. In a message to the private forum, he demanded an explanation from the leader. But the cryptic response blamed Mike for implicating his loved ones, warning there would be consequences if he broke their bond. Fear and paranoia gripped Mike as the days passed with no further contact. He began to suspect the cult was manipulating events in increasingly disturbing ways. Their true motives and in-game remained obscure, yet the threat of escalation loomed large. One night, Mike spotted dragonflies swarming his car as he left work. Peering closer, he noticed papers tucked under the wipers, photos of himself and Jessica going about daily routines, a chilling reminder that nowhere was beyond their reach. The final straw came when Mike found his front door ajar one evening. Rushing inside, he discovered his home had been ransacked with a singular message scrawled on the wall: "You cannot leave us so easily." Panic set in as Mike realized he was in far deeper than he had imagined. These people knew no bounds and wouldn't let him walk away after seeing too much of their sinister work. He had to find a way to stop them, but how does one outmaneuver a cult controlling nature's smallest spirits? In a frenzy, Mike began researching the group's origins and tracking down former members he hoped were no longer under their spell. One anonymous tipster went dark after promising to meet, leaving cryptic clues about their remote compound. It offered Mike's only lead, however tenuous. Gathering what supplies he could, he fled town under cover of night, hoping to outpace the cult's watchful eyes. Dragonflies swarmed the rearview mirror as fields and forests sped by, heralding the pursuit that would test Mike to his limits in the showdown to come.